This week we're taking a look at an enigmatic passage, literally an enigmatic passage. Let's dive right in and take a look. This is in 1 Corinthians chapter 13, verse 12 from the ESV. For now we see in a mirror dimly, but then face to face. Now I know in part, then I shall know fully, even as I have been fully known. There's lots of interesting stuff in here. We have a now and then contrast that happens twice, with the second now and then contrast further explaining the first. And also there's a shift between the two from a first person plural we to a first person singular I. And we'll talk about that more as we unpack it. Let's dive into the Koine and see what Brother Paul had to say. Blepomen gar RT esoptru en enigmati. So, blepomen, we see or we are seeing, gar, for we see, RT, now. For we see now, D esoptru. D is the shortened form of dia. The alpha drops off because the next word begins with a vowel. So it's through a mirror or by means of a mirror. So what does he tell us so far? For we are seeing, or we see now, through or by means of a mirror, en enigmati, in enigma, in a riddle. So enigmati, we get our English word enigma from it, literally means in a riddle. So diasoptru is seeing literally in a glass. So we're seeing in a mirror, in a glass, and it's a riddle glass. It's a mirror riddle, a riddling, puzzling way. So what we presently see is a mirror riddle. Now, in a lot of versions, including the ESV here that says dimly, we either see darkly or dimly. But it's important to notice in the verse that there is no reference to either light or dark. It says that the way we're seeing is in a puzzling way, an enigmatic way, through or by means of a mirror, but it doesn't say that our trouble is darkness or dimness. The trouble is the fact that we're seeing not directly, but in a mirror. What does a mirror show you? A mirror shows you a two-dimensional reflection, a two-dimensional image or representation of a three-dimensional subject. So at best, you cannot see the full reality in a reflection because you're seeing two dimensions of a three-dimensional thing. It's an image or a reflection that is a partial representation of the real thing. It's not the whole thing, it's a partial representation of the real thing. So, in summary, Paul's first thing that he tells the Corinthians is, now we see. So our current state of seeing is by means of a mirror, and the result is puzzling. It's an enigma. It's not the whole picture. It's not the complete picture. It's not a perfect representation. It's a reflection, and therefore isn't the whole story. It's not the whole picture. Now let's look at the then of the first now and then contrast. Tote de, prosopon, prosopon. Tote de, but then, so we know how things are now, but then in a future time, prosopon, prosopon, face to face. So what we see now is an image of reality, inadequate to provide a complete picture, but then at some unspecified time in the future, what we're going to see is face to face. So what's the difference? The mirror is an intervening intermediary. It's something that is reflecting an image to you, whereas face to face, your stereo vision with which you were created allows you to take in 3 dimensions and not 2. Face-to-face gives you a full picture. The reflection in the mirror is enigmatic. It's a puzzle in as much as, regardless of how much light there is, it's an incomplete picture. It's a 2-dimensional representation of a 3-dimensional subject. So, in the future, no intermediary, no intervening, puzzling mirror. You'll see face to face. There's an interesting passage in Numbers chapter 12 that differentiates most prophets and their experience with God from Moses. And we're going to look at it to see if it if you think it has any influence on what Paul is writing here. So it's Numbers chapter 12, verses 6 through 8. This is from the ESV. And he said, "Hear my words. If there is a prophet among you, I, the Lord, make myself known to him in a vision. I speak with him in a dream. Not so with my servant Moses. He is faithful in all my house. With him I speak mouth to mouth, clearly, and not in riddles. And he beholds the form of the Lord. Why then were you not afraid to speak against my servant Moses?" So look at the differences between most prophets and Moses. Other prophets received enigmatic, puzzling, right? He even uses the word puzzle here in the verse, uses the word riddles. They receive enigmatic dreams and visions, but Moses got the message mouth to mouth, or perhaps we might use it synonymously as face to face. He saw the form of God versus a reflection, versus a glimpse, a vision, a dream, not something that was direct. They saw indirectly, like in a mirror, but Moses saw directly, is what we're told in Numbers 12. Moses got to see all 3 dimensions, whereas most of the other prophets only saw 2 dimensions. So back to Paul. What does Paul tell the Corinthians? He says, you currently, kind of like the prophets, are getting a partial picture. You're not seeing the whole thing. It's a puzzling reflection. There's a riddle-like quality because you're not getting the whole thing. But eventually you will see face-to-face like Moses. You're going to get all 3 dimensions eventually. Pretty great stuff. Let's move on and look at the second now and then contrast. Arti gnosko ek merus. So arti again is now. Gnosko, I know. Notice he said, we see, but here he says, I know. So he's gone from the plural, from the group experience, to an individual experience. It becomes more personal, more direct. Arti gnosko, now I know, ek merus, from parts, from pieces. Merus is plural. So he says, now I know from parts or from pieces. Another way of saying what I currently know is based on incomplete information. I don't have it all. I have parts or I have pieces. An interesting thing to do is go back and read verses 9 and 10 of 1 Corinthians 13, and you'll see that phrase, ek merus, from parts or pieces, used repeatedly in those verses. He's setting up his readers prior to this verse by talking about an experience that is based on parts and pieces, that's incomplete. Let's go to the second half. Tote de epignosomai kathos kai epignosthein. So tote de, but then, just like in our previous now and then contrast, but then, epignosomai, I shall know, kathos kai epignosthein, just as or even as also I am known. This is my favorite part of the verse. So he says, even though currently I know based on parts and pieces, I will know then, just as also I am known. The degree of knowing that I will have is the same to which I am currently known, or I am already known. By whom? By God, obviously. The difference being, if we sort of import, rightly or wrongly, the passage from Numbers, the concept of the face-to-face experience, I'm going to know the way that I am known as Moses knew the way he was known. I'm going to see directly all three dimensions. I'm not going to be limited to reflections and parts and pieces, enigmas and puzzles and riddles that come through visions and dreams, but I'm going to see directly, face to face, to know kathos kai epignosthein, just as or even as also I am known. The degree of my knowing will be a full degree, not just parts and pieces. Pretty spectacular, pretty magnificent. So Paul says the present earthly experience is sort of visions and dreams and riddles made up of parts of the picture. The enigma of only seeing some and having to fill in the missing parts in your mind. But eventually it'll be like Moses' experience. It'll be mouth to mouth, face to face, seeing the form of God in all three dimensions. You'll know and understand even as you are known and have already been known. Now, one last thing I'd like to wrestle with before we go. Did you notice what Paul didn't say? He didn't criticize anyone, himself or others, for their failure to see clearly. That is not a bug, it's a feature. That is not a failure on your part that you currently have a mirror reflection that is puzzling and enigmatic because it doesn't show the full picture, only parts and pieces, and leaves you with an incomplete understanding. That is not a fault on your part or my part. That is not something that we're failing at. That's just the way it presently is. The other thing that he doesn't say is, isn't it terrible that I only see parts and pieces, that I'm beholding, that we are all beholding in a mirror, in a puzzling, riddling, enigmatic way? Nope, he doesn't say that it's a terrible thing. It's just the reality of the now that will be replaced with a different reality in the then. So for we who are given toward pessimism, I may want to complain that I'm not seeing the whole picture. I may look at myself or others and think it's a weakness that we're not getting the whole picture. But Paul tells the Corinthians, guess what? We all now don't get the whole picture. We see by means of a mirror in a puzzling, riddling, enigmatic way because we're only seeing part of the picture. I know now ek merus from parts and pieces, but then when it's face to face, I'm going to know even as I am known. Pretty spectacular stuff. I hope that in the interim, while we're looking at life through a mirror in an enigmatic, riddling, puzzling way and only seeing parts and pieces, that we'll be able to cope with it and deal with it as we wait for the knowing that comes in the then. Great little verse, isn't it? It's literally enigmatic because that's the way we currently see. Through a mirror, by means of a mirror, in a puzzling way, only seeing 2 of 3 dimensions at best, getting pieces and parts and not the whole. Hope that was good for you. If it was, like, share, subscribe, tell your friends, leave some feedback in the comments, and until next time, Karis Kairene Humin, grace and peace to you.